Whether it's your business, your finance, your career, your family or your life, it's time for Dollars with Sense, the show where our experts show you how to work smarter, not harder. Dollars with Sense is here to help.
My name's James Lynch and welcome to Dollars with Sense. Today we're talking about blockchain technology and the future. Is it here to stay? Anouk Pinchetti, welcome to the show.
Glad to be back, James.
So just last week, the budget proposal had $700,000 dedicated towards blockchain technology research here in Australia. Now, admittedly, the budget hasn't gone through completely yet, but it's certainly been proposed. But I believe in many respects that it's testament that blockchain technology, from a government point of view, is worth looking at, and there's a good chance that it's here to stay and it's going to make up a huge part of our future. This is a space that you work in every single day. What are your views?
Absolutely. The technology is out there now. It is here to stay. It cannot be uninvented. Now it's time to look at what is the way that we want to integrate it into our society. What is the benefit to people as a whole and to our communities and societies as we start to look at this technology into the future.
Now, I understand adoption really is a hurdle that the industry is coming over at the moment. You know, obviously those integrations into business, society, government. What are some of the strategies that are being put in place, particularly, from the blockchain sector, to overcome a lot of those integration challenges?
So, because this is a network technology, you start to look at network effects. So you need a dense penetration in a particular area. Now, the early projects were very heavily geared towards early adopters, people who were not afraid of technology, people who get a buzz out of knowing some secret recipe that other people don't yet understand. For the mainstream to adopt something, all their friends need to be using it as well. And as we go forward into the future, I actually think that blockchain will be ubiquitous, although some of the technicalities of the technology underlying it will actually probably not look anything like what we think of as blockchain today. However, we won't need to think of it as a blockchain or a holochain or a hash graph or any of these other technologies that are all solving similar problems, because it will be like the internet. You're just opening a website or an app on your phone.
Yep. You assume that it's there. It's, I suppose, the motor under the hood, really, isn't it, in many respects?
Absolutely. Okay,
so how far, into this blockchain space or into this technology space are we? I mean, I've heard people saying we're 1%, 2%, 3% into the industry, as to where it's got to go. From your point of view and living and breathing it and seeing it every single day, how far in are we?
There's a number of perspectives to that. So on the one hand, we're several $100 billion in terms of funding in that space to develop this technology. It is definitely on an accelerating curve. There are massive projects globally in every industry, but the technology, on the other hand, is not ready. So several $1 billion were raised last year and this year so far in ICO projects, which means that for the next 2 years, the technology is going to be built out of those projects. Some of them will see fail, some of them will see succeed. At the moment, there are about 1,500 plus cryptocurrencies out there. Most of those I expect to fall by the wayside and fade out. However, the ones that continue into the future, I expect to change the world. And as this technology matures, one of the interesting things about it is that it's being developed at the edge of the network. Anyone, anywhere, can pick up a piece of code, make a change, and create a new project or product out of this. And that's the exciting piece, because when you have a centralized platform like, say, a Facebook, no matter how many people want there to be a new, like, dislike,
Sure.
emotion added to it, unless one central organization decides for that to happen. It won't happen. Here, anyone is able to change that and build it in for themselves, even for them and their friends to use, for instance. And that's what is so exciting with the number of projects and the diversity of them. There are new ones coming out, literally multiple every day.
So it's that free access to the information and I suppose code and infrastructure which allows people to build their own applications and employ this technology for their own needs. Something that we hear time and time again is how blockchain technology is going to change the world, and we seem to really kind of talk around that issue. What are some of the real practical or tangible examples that you can think of how it's exactly going to do that?
So one of the things about Bitcoin is that it is an alternative currency, and it has a very different logic than does the bank-issued currency that dominates most nations today.
Sure.
So whereas the bank issuance has a single issuer at a central bank level, and then through reserve ratios has issuance at a rate of interest into society by other banks that is for profit against being loaned out against assets. Cryptocurrencies will allow that to be changed to almost any agreement that people can buy into. Partly what we're seeing, for instance, is a lot of efforts suddenly to include the 2.1 billion unbanked households in the world. A lot of the people who don't have access to bank accounts like we do here in Australia live in countries where there may not be the official documents, or at least not the density of adoption that we have here. So how do you get around that? How do you make money as simple as downloading an app, right? So just the inclusion of the huge majority of people who don't have the same level of banking access that we do into a global marketplace is a massive shift. On top of that, the ability to track different types of resources that are now currently not featured on balance sheets anywhere can also fundamentally change the way that societies organize and distribute access to resources.
Yeah, look, it's a good point you make, and I think certainly here in Australia it can be quite hard for us to, I suppose, visualise and appreciate the value and the change that blockchain technology is going to, I suppose, offer. I mean, in many respects, rightly or wrongly, we can rely on and trust our government to a certain degree, with respect to record keeping and whatever. But certainly in the developing nations, this is an example that I saw the other day, was land titles, particularly over in Africa. And obviously having a distributed, tamper-proof ledger of land titles, you remove, corruption and so on and so forth. And I think, certainly from my point of view, that's where we're really going to see that, those particular benefits. We're not all, lucky to be born, or live here in Australia. We really are the absolute minority, So I suppose that's the example that I would give,
Absolutely, absolutely. It's in developing nations. The transparency is a way to overcome corruption, right? It's that visibility and the ability to actually make people's reputations open because you can see how people interact with each other. It's invaluable. It's absolutely going to change the way some of these countries can interact with the rest of the world.
Well, that's right. Again, I suppose leading again to that globalisation and bringing them into the fold. I mean, I think effective record keeping and transparency of information can really put you in good stead with respect to interacting with other countries. So, fantastic. Well, thank you again for your time.
My pleasure.
We've just been speaking with Anouk Pinchetti from the Blockchain Centre in Melbourne. Blockchain is here to stay. Its application extends to the private sector as much as the public sector. Over the next few years, we expect to see a variety of different applications in a number of industries. If you'd like more information on what we've talked about tonight, come and visit the Blockchain Centre in Melbourne or visit dollarswithsense.com.au.